Over half the population is going to go through menopause, yet we don't talk about it at home. We haven't learned about it at school. We don't talk about it in the doctor's office. We often feel like our body is betraying us and we don't know who we are anymore.
She's a powerhouse in women's health. Tamsen Fadal is the Emmy-winning journalist and New York Times bestselling author of How to Menopause, fiercely changing the conversation on women's health.
Why is menopause still treated as such a taboo topic?
Ageism and sexism. We've just kind of said goodbye to women after the reproductive years. We look at women that are in midlife and we say, wow, their best years are behind them. And that's kind of what the medical system has done as well.
What are the symptoms? What are women experiencing? What are they going through on a biological and chemical level, but also on an emotional level as well?
Brain fog was the most debilitating of the symptoms. Mood swings, weight changes, joint pain, itchy skin, dryness all over, low libido.
What happens to a woman's sex drive during perimenopause?
Nearly 60% of women say that menopause has negatively impacted their sex life, and I would say that number is even higher. They experience painful sex, there's dryness that happens all over your body, and it didn't feel good.
Why is it doctors still dismiss these symptoms and medical research is not investing more?
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
Jay Shetty.
Jay Shetty.
The one, the only Jay Shetty.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Today's guest is going to talk to us about a subject that I've been fascinated by for a long, long time. It's something that I have a lot of questions about, something that I don't know that much about, and something that every single person we love is going to go through. Today's guest is Tamsen Fadal, an Emmy Award-winning journalist and the New York Times best-selling author of How to Menopause. She's also the producer of the acclaimed documentary, The M Factor, and host of the Tamsen Show podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. Tamsen has become a leading voice in the global conversation on midlife, menopause, and reinvention, and helping women navigate this transition with knowledge, confidence, and community. Please welcome to On Purpose, Tamsen Fadal. Tamsen, thank you so much for being here. I said this to you off camera. I'm going to say it again. I'm so excited for this conversation. I feel so much has been lost when it comes to women's health, men's understanding of it, and the ability for women to take charge of their health, but also for men to be understanding, supportive, and recognizing what a big thing it is. And I'm so grateful that you wrote this book, How to Menopause, that I highly recommend everyone gets. But thank you so much for being here, truly.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be talking about this because it is so important for men to hear this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start off by, I have a ton of questions for you. And like, usually when I interview someone, I have some understanding or some knowledge of the area. I have nothing, which is a really great place for me to be in because I feel like it's going to give a lot of people the opportunity to learn. And the first question I wanted to ask you is, why is menopause still treated as such a taboo topic when it comes to everyday conversation and everyday life?
It's such a great question. And I think I have struggled with it for so long myself. Look, I think it's wrapped up in a few things. I think it's wrapped up in ageism and sexism. And I also think this is a time in life where we've just kind of said goodbye to women after the reproductive years. We look at women that are in midlife and we say, wow, their best years are behind them. Society has done that for a very, very long time, especially here in the US. And that's kind of what the medical system has done as well. So we have put the word menopause and taboo together for so long. And my goal is to separate those two things so we're never saying those two things together.
It doesn't get the spotlight it deserves when every woman we know is going to experience it at some point in their life. And talk to us about how long it lasts. Like just break down the taboo of how long is it going to last? When does it happen? For everyone who's like starting from scratch like me, like what is it like?
Help somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it was really shocking to me. I spent 30 years in the news business and I had never said the word menopause that I remember on television.
Wow.
And that tells you a lot. We talked about all sorts of studies. We talked about health studies. We talked about diets. We talked about everything. menopause and women's health were not the things we discussed. And that goes to your first question about how taboo it has been for such a long time. When I actually found out I was in menopause, I got a very simple note from my doctor saying, in menopause, any questions? And no real answers after that. So I started digging into it to figure out what was going on. And I quickly learned 1 billion women across the world were going to be in menopause by this year. And I thought, okay, well, what is it? So we'll break it down really simply because I always think it's the best way to do it. Perimenopause is that time leading up to menopause. 4 to 10 years of struggle, of hormone changes, of not knowing exactly what's going on with your body, of all different type of symptoms, not just hot flashes. When you hit menopause, that means that you've gone 1 year without your period, and then everything after that is post-menopause. All the symptoms haven't stopped yet, but that could be a third to half of your life that we're talking about. So when you think about how long a woman is going through this transition, this next season, and the fact that we have such little information about it, it was just shocking to me.
And talk to me about what are the symptoms, like what's someone experiencing at this time? Because as a man, we're so disconnected from women's health already. And then this is, like you said, this is a underspoken about area. Like, what are the symptoms? What are women experiencing? What are they going through on a biological and chemical level, but also on an emotional level as well?
I'm glad you said that because emotional is the big thing. And I think it gets overlooked quite often because we talk about hot flashes and we talk about irregular periods and we talk about brain fog. And I think for me, brain fog was probably the most debilitating of the symptoms because it gets wrapped up with a lot of things. I had anxiety, mood swings. A woman can go through weight changes. When you're talking about brain fog, you could be reading a book and not remember the plot of the book. You could be having a conversation like this. I could be sitting here, Jay, across from you 3 years ago. I probably wouldn't be able to have this kind of conversation with you without feeling like, hey, can I stop and try to remember what I was talking about? You go through joint pain. You can go through itchy skin, dryness all over, low libido. So if you think about one day you're going along just fine in life, right? You're in your 30s, you're doing great. You're maybe in the height of your career. You're on your way to wherever you want to be. You're in a relationship. And you might start to see some of these symptoms crop up. You're not sleeping as well anymore. That's a big one. You're gaining weight around the middle, but you've been eating the same and really working out. So you wake up, and what I heard over and over from women when I was researching this is that I don't feel like myself anymore. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. And that to me was one of the most hurtful things that I could hear because I understood exactly what they were talking about. One day I woke up and I was like, I'm a shell of who I am, and I don't know how to find the light switch in this room. I just am in the dark.
I mean, that sounds like truly one of the most difficult, challenging experiences anyone could go through. And we're saying everyone's going to go through it for nearly a decade, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that every woman we know is going to go through this, the fact that it's going to affect them physically, mentally, and emotionally to the point that it can be debilitating to how you just spoken about. What are we seeing a correspondence with when we look at women's health at this age and when they're going through this process? How is that affecting their work, their career, their family, and everything else that comes with it? Like, what's happening because I think sometimes when we talk about health, we kind of talk about it in this silo of like, here's what's happening chemically, here's what's happening with the hormones, but this is having real life impact. Is there any correlation between menopause and divorce, like, talk to me about the real life impact of it.
It's such a good topic because it doesn't just happen in the doctor's office. You could go to the doctor's office and have the conversation, but once you leave there, you have to think about the whole 360 of it. And it really is what I get excited to talk about because I think that we feel very lost during this time as women. We're in our career and maybe we're hit with perimenopause and going into menopause. And we could be showing up to work, not being able to have a conversation. We don't know how do you go into your boss and say, hey, I might be in perimenopause for 7 years. I think that for a lot of women, they're starting to realize that we're normalizing the conversation. We're definitely not having the silence that we had before, but it can really impact you at work. It can show up in a lot of different ways. And what I've been fighting against is making sure that it doesn't penalize women either. We don't want that to hurt women. Women at this point are at the height of their careers. We want companies to retain women, hold on to women. They have some of the greatest wisdom they could ever have during these times and beyond. So I think it's really important for women to be able to get a hold and understand what's going on so they're not going through this journey just kind of blindly, which is what's been happening. And then I think when it comes to relationships, it has a real impact. We see a lot of divorces happening in the 40s. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that somebody wakes up all of a sudden and feels very differently, or maybe their libido's low, so their partner doesn't understand what's going on, or all of a sudden something that didn't bother them a long time ago, they're snapping like this. And that's what's really happening out there. I think we're starting to get to a place where we're starting to have this conversation more and more, but it's really where we have to bring everybody into it. It can't just be women having this conversation with each other.
What's a myth about menopause that you think's lasted too long, that people are still holding on to? And when you talk about it, that's their first reaction. Because, I feel really embarrassed saying this, but I know a lot of men who'd say, oh yeah, there was just this period where my wife was acting out and she was being a bit crazy and she was a bit mad, like language like that.
Yeah.
And that's one of those myths that I think people are just like, oh, just during this phase, like, oh, the kids left home and everything just, and it becomes this lifestyle thing. What are some of the myths you're seeing that you're coming up against when you're talking about this?
Yeah, I've seen so many myths with this. I think the first myth is that your best years are behind you, and that's just not true. I really think that you're coming into a whole new period. And even if you look at some of the data and the scientific studies out there, we look at women that are post-menopause, and those are some of the best years that they can have in their life. So that's exciting. I think another big myth, or something that women feel, and they've said this over and over, I don't feel like myself and I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like something's wrong with me and I just can't pinpoint what it is, but I know this isn't me anymore. And so, I start the book saying that you are not alone and you're not crazy. That is not what's going on. You've got something happening to you biologically, and that's affecting you in a whole bunch of different ways. And as soon as you understand that, then you can take those steps and deal with those symptoms. And I think it's important also to know that, everyone doesn't have the symptoms that we talked about. Everybody goes about this differently. And I think that's what can make it so confusing to so many women.
What's happening to the brain and body during perimenopause and menopause? Like, what's chemically going on?
Yeah, chemically we're losing estrogen, obviously, also losing progesterone. And so when you're going through these hormones, think about what we went through when we were in puberty. Your hormones were all over the place. I think of perimenopause as kind of this wild ride. It's sort of unexpected. You don't know what's going to happen. And you definitely feel that in your head when you've lost that estrogen. We have estrogen receptors all over our body, and the brain is no exception. We have them everywhere. And so I remember when I was going through perimenopause, and I didn't know I was even going through it because I didn't have the vocabulary for it, that I would sit there and I'd read something. I couldn't remember it. I would look at a word. I knew the word. I recognized it. I knew how to say it, but it wouldn't come out of my mouth. And those are some scary things that happen because you think, is something going on with me? Is this dementia? Is this Alzheimer's? Is this something very serious? And so I know a lot of women who have gone to the doctor saying, like, there's really something wrong with my head. I don't know what's happening. Or they walk into a room and don't remember why they walked into a room. I talked to one doctor in the course of doing research for the book, and she said, I forgot my medical number, which is something we say like our social security number. We say it all the time for years. And I sat there and I couldn't remember it. And I actually went to the neurology department and I made them do brain scans on me. That's how serious it can be.
Wow.
Women have been told, like, if you eat perfectly, if you work out perfectly, if you do all these things perfectly, you're going to be okay down the line. But the truth is, we hit perimenopause, and there are some real long-term health concerns that you have to pay attention to. Maybe it's not stress. Maybe you don't need to just go home and, and take a walk outside. Maybe it's something more than that, and it's not just you that's going through this. If you're in your 40s or thereabout and you are not able to sleep at night, you have irregular periods, you're feeling anxious or you're feeling a little bit moody, maybe you're gaining some weight around the middle even though you're not doing anything differently, you can pretty much rest assured you're in perimenopause.
You've probably been hearing about AI everywhere, and we all need to be mindful of the tools we trust in this new chapter of technology. Claude is the if you know AI assistant that just feels different. While other AIs often sound like robots, Claude has been created with special research that informs its character, meaning that Claude just gets it when it comes to empathy and emotional intelligence. That's why millions of people are turning to Claude for parenting tips, dating advice, mindful habits like journaling, budgeting, and so much more. Claude has been thoughtfully crafted by Anthropic and its team of researchers whose mission is to design the most capable and secure systems that place people at the center. You can try Claude for free at any time and for a special offer on premium capabilities. with Claude Pro. Head to claude.ai/purpose. That's CLAUDE.ai/purpose. It really hit me when I was at a Time 100 health event, and I know Halle Berry, who you've collaborated with at your events and multiple other places. I remember her speaking about this, and I know she's been a big advocate from the celebrity side to talk about this topic. And she was talking about how she really believed she was just going to be too fit, too strong, too like yogaed out. And, you know, she really believed that she had a workout regime that would beat menopause and that it wouldn't be a reality for her. And when she said that, there was no way you could outwork or out yoga or whatever it may be, that there wasn't a method to avoiding or just pushing through this.
Yeah.
What are some of the lies or things women have been told growing up that you think have tripped them up as they come into perimenopause and menopause?
Yeah, I think it's so important to realize that. And Halle Berry has been an incredible voice in normalizing this conversation and getting out there and having real, honest talks about what she went through. And I think that's really helped in so many ways, because I think women see that and go, oh my gosh, if she's going through that and she can talk about perimenopause and menopause, then maybe it's okay for me to do the same thing. You know, I think that women have been told, like, if you eat perfectly, if you work out perfectly, if you do all these things perfectly, you're going to be okay down the line. But the truth is, we hit perimenopause, and there are some real long-term health concerns that you have to pay attention to when it comes to brain health, when it comes to heart health, when it comes to bone health, especially. I mean, they're real serious things. I know you've had Dr. Vonda Wright talking to you, and she talks about bone health. It's one of the scariest things. I didn't think about my bones at 20 or 30, even 40 years old. It wasn't something I was thinking about. So I think that young women have been misled in a lot of different ways to think that this is something that happens to older women and you don't have to worry about it. We see women coming into perimenopause in their late 30s and beyond. And I don't want them to be afraid. I want them to be really inspired to get a hold of it, know what's happening, and be able to handle it so they don't have these bumps that I think a lot of women have had leading up to this time.
Let's talk about some of those. What are the early signs of perimenopause that, and I know you said there's lots of different, but, and everyone has different experiences, but what would you say are the early signs of perimenopause that you see across women?
Yeah, I would say the three big ones that I've seen across women are irregular periods. You're going along just fine, and then all of a sudden you have your period very heavy, or you don't have it at all and you don't know what's happening. A lot of times women will go to the doctor and the doctor will say, it's just stress. Calm down a little bit. It'll be okay. Instead of, hey, you're 41, you know, do you have any other these 30 plus symptoms? Maybe it's perimenopause. The other big one I would say is sleep disruption. That's huge. I was somebody that used to be able to sleep all the time. I've heard women that say, oh my gosh, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm up and I can't go back to sleep, or I can't even get to sleep. And that again is something else. Try to go to work and you'll have 5 days like that of not being able to sleep. And then you start to understand what's going on and you just don't feel like yourself. And, I think the third one is more of mood changes. There can be anxiety, there can be rage, there can be depression. And there's a lot of things like that happen during this time. So I think those are the top three that you see in perimenopause. And the other ones come along. We've all heard of hot flashes. We know a lot about weight gain that starts to happen, but those are three big ones. And I think that those are three very difficult ones as you're coming up against those.
And what's the difference between perimenopause and menopause?
Yeah. So perimenopause, you're still getting your period. It's all the time leading up to menopause. When you hit menopause, that's that one day after 12 months without your period, and then you're not getting your period any longer. So these are still your reproductive years, but you're in perimenopause, and those can overlap a lot of things. Women can get pregnant in perimenopause. Once you hit menopause, you're no longer having a cycle. And then everything after that, you're considered menopause. And some people call it postmenopausal. I just say menopause because it's easier for me to remember when I do have brain fog. But I think that it's important to know that perimenopause feels very unpredictable. It feels very confusing because you've been fine up until then. And you could be in your late 30s and you're thinking, I'm too young for this. How could I be dealing with this? But when those hormonal fluctuations start, you start seeing some of these changes. And I don't think we were really ever taught that. You asked earlier, what are some of the things that young women, they were taught, you're going to get your period. If you decide you want to have children, you're going to go through your pregnancy. And then we kind of fall off the map, not only in society, but also in the medical system.
Yeah. And then what are the symptoms of menopause then?
So the symptoms of menopause, you can still have a lot of these symptoms that can go right through, and some start to wane off a little bit, and some women can have hot flashes in their 80s. And it just depends if you decide, how you're going to treat them, what symptoms are important for you to treat. Hormone therapy is one of the options that has been named and deemed by the Menopause Society as one of the most effective treatments for hot flashes and vaginal dryness. But I think that, it's important to know what works for you. Not everybody, as we said, is going to be able to do everything or want to do everything. So I think it's been important first for me to go out there to educate women, because I'll tell you, I was clueless. I had no idea what was happening. And I really felt like I was crazy. And I would wake up in the morning and think like, oh my gosh, I got 2 hours of sleep and I've got to go to work. And I'd get to work and not remember what was going on or remember what I was supposed to be doing. And I hear so many stories of women in different places of work, or women that are also raising children at the same time, or taking care of elderly parents, or they're in a relationship, or they're in a new relationship. So it can be really difficult. And I think it's important to know that menopause is not just for older women. Young women go through menopause. I consider late 30s a young woman.
To me, it's just mind-boggling how women have been so resilient and strong to move in a world that isn't aware or is not talking about what they're going through on a daily basis, and just how many relationships that touches, and having so many people in your life who don't know what you're going through. Like we talk about, I feel, in the wellness community around how it feels to be misunderstood. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the deepest form of feeling misunderstood, because you're going through something physically, mentally, emotionally, daily, and everyone you meet has no context of why you're behaving that way. And then you get labeled, oh, well, she's just going through something, or whatever it may be, that disassociates you from the exact experience.
The truth is that you don't even know you're going through it yourself sometimes. It's not like you went into the doctor and they said, hey, at 35, you should start thinking about perimenopause because you might be going through some of these symptoms. Right now, we're trying to teach women to go to the doctor proactively and say, hey, these are my 10 symptoms. Could this be perimenopause? And that is my hope and dream, that one day there will be this baseline, like we talk about mammograms, like we talk about other kind of tests that people are supposed to get when it comes to health and wellness, that we say, hey, maybe this is what you're going through. Maybe it's not stress. Maybe you don't need to just go home and, and take a walk outside. Maybe it's something more than that. And it's not just you that's going through this. If we can get to that place, it would be just a really beautiful place. And I think it would end a lot of the suffering, because I don't think women should have to suffer during this time.
So that's really the first step. And I know in the book you give a list of 34, is it, symptoms that people experience? And so I guess the first step is, if you feel any of those 34 things, go and have the conversation, because chances are your doctor or someone may not have the conversation with you proactively if you don't raise it.
100%. A lot of doctors aren't trained about this. And that was the other thing that was so shocking for me to learn. I think I was somebody who went to the doctor. This is what the doctor said. I went home and that's what we did. And what I realized over time is that as we looked into menopause and perimenopause, because of the fact that women's health has not been a priority past a certain age, in midlife mostly, after about 40 years old, a lot of doctors weren't trained about this. And to their own admission, OBGYNs, their specialty, sometimes got a day of training in medical school to talk about this. If you can imagine all those years, and they've had to go out and learn for themselves. And so there are a lot of doctors that leave medical school and don't feel comfortable talking about something like this. So about 75% of women go in and their symptoms are left untreated as a result of that. And that number is staggering to me.
That was something I saw as well. I remember at a conference I was at, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a number that said something like, only 2% of all medical research goes towards women's health. Was it? Is that right?
You're right. I would never correct you on that. That's so right.
That's right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then if you look at that percentage, a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of that goes to menopause and perimenopause. And I don't know about you, but I'd never heard the word perimenopause until I started saying it.
I haven't heard it since I followed you probably. So yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I went, wait, what's perimenopause? And so I think that the more we can say the word, the more we can get it out there. And it doesn't sound like this scary word. When I first started talking about it, I was told, you're going to blow up your career talking about menopause. You're going to age right out of your career, because that is what we thought about when we thought about this word. And so I'm hoping that perimenopause has a little bit of a lighter context, and so that women can say, okay, this is the stage I'm in. This is where I'm at. It's going to be okay. And I know what to do. And I'm not afraid to say the word out loud.
Yeah. Before we get into some of the solutions and what women can do, what are some of the risks of not managing or not treating these symptoms? So if you just feel the symptoms, but you didn't think about it, you weren't aware, no one read your book, you weren't conscious of it, what happens? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, I thought when I went into it, okay, I don't know. I lost my mom to breast cancer, so I was very scared of doing anything. And I think that for me, I never had that conversation with a parent, with a mom. I've heard that from a lot of women. But I think one of the big conversations that we miss in all of this are the long-term health ramifications that can come from that. When we talk about osteoporosis, one of the big silent killers of women, when we talk about heart disease, we talk about so many women dying from heart disease. It's unbelievable when we look at those numbers. And then we talk about brain health. We talk about Alzheimer's. More women are diagnosed with Alzheimer's than men are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so we have so much more research to do on all these things, but some of those are long-term health risks that we have to at least pay attention to. There have been studies done that say, wow, you have more hot flashes. There could be a correlation to your heart health. Pay attention to that. And I don't think those are the conversations we're having enough of. And we're all learning as we go right now and trying to get as much information out there as we can. But those are big risks that I don't want to take when I'm older. I don't want to live to be much, much older and be suffering during that time because I didn't know about this time. And it's also, when I think of my 30s, in your 30s, that's the best time to start protecting your bones and paying attention and having great healthy habits. There's so many things I wish I had done when I was younger, now that I understand this is a stage I'm going to go through.
And do women of different ethnicities, does perimenopause affect them differently?
There are a lot of studies that are gone on. There's a SWAN study that's gone on for a long time. There is a lot of research that has shown that Black women have more intense symptoms of menopause and often can have longer symptoms and start earlier. And so there's so much more research done. There has been a lot of research done in different countries to look at things. For example, women in Asia get fewer hot flashes, but more joint pain. But the question is why? And so there's a lot that still has to be done to look at that and pull this apart and really say, okay, we're looking at menopause, but we've got to start looking at perimenopause, because these women went through all of these symptoms for 7 to 10 years. So what happened during that time, and what was happening differently? What were we talking about when it comes to environment, when it comes to food, when it comes to genetics?
It's so hard because it's so varied.
Yes, so varied.
By ethnicity, by what age it starts, by the symptoms you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so no wonder people just call it stress and call it a day, because it takes so much. You'd have to be very knowledgeable to actually diagnose it effectively, I imagine, and to really be able to speak to what someone needs to do.
Well, that's the interesting part is, a lot of people go, okay, what's the blood test I can take to figure out if I'm in perimenopause? But if you think about this, most doctors say you don't really need blood tests. You need to know what your symptoms are. And that's how you can pretty much diagnose. If you're in your 40s or thereabout and you are not able to sleep at night, you have irregular periods, you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling a little bit moody, maybe you're gaining some weight around the middle, even though you're not doing anything differently, you can pretty much rest assured you're in perimenopause. Now, if you're dealing with heart palpitations, or you're dealing with much more intense symptoms, you probably need to make sure it's not something else. But most of the time, that's what you should start looking at there. And the sad thing is that what I've learned from women is the Band-Aid that a lot of them are given is antidepressants. A lot of women are given antidepressants right away when they walk into a doctor's office and say, I'm dealing with stress, I'm gaining some weight, I'm not able to sleep. And the truth is they might need antidepressants, but they should also be talking about perimenopause or menopause.
Wow. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, Hallie tells that great story of how, her doctor thought she had an STD.
Yeah. Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah, which is crazy. Like when I heard that story, I was like, wow, that's one thing. But then to be told, oh, it's probably depression and you should be on antidepressants. What does that do to men? So if you were given antidepressants, when you had perimenopause, what does that do to your perimenopause?
Well, I was given them. That's how I know.
Oh, wow.
And that's what was so shocking. So I didn't know I was in perimenopause. I didn't understand all these symptoms. I just knew I was feeling really off. And then I finally landed on the floor of my studio at work in the bathroom with my heart racing out of control, sweating profusely, not able to catch my breath, trying to calm my body down. And I went to the doctor and I found out I was in menopause, because once you hit menopause, you can do a blood test because now you've kind of leveled out there.
How many years were you struggling without knowing?
I was probably struggling about 7 years.
Wow.
You know, I'd gone through a divorce. A lot of the stress I attributed to that. I had hair falling out. I wasn't able to sleep. I went to a doctor, and I went to a doctor a couple of different times. And it's funny, I ran across some of my papers recently that were about 4 years before I realized I was in menopause. And it said, complains of moodiness and weight gain. But no one ever said the word perimenopause to me. I was given Lexapro. That's what I was given. And I was given antidepressants. And so antidepressants, of course, can help with mood, but it's not going to help your hot flashes. And it's probably not going to help maybe it'll help a little bit on your sleep, but it's probably not going to help some of the other irregular periods. And so I just think it's so important for all disciplines, not just OBGYNs, to have this conversation and be aware of it. And I'm proud of women, because I think women are really, the onus is on women right now to stand up and say, hey, I'm tracking myself. I know what's going on. I've written down my symptoms. I'm aware. And I think women are more aware than ever. You know this better than anybody, of their health and what's happening in their lives, to walk in and say, maybe this is perimenopause. Can you tell me if it is? And can you tell me if you're comfortable having this conversation with me? And if not, I need to find another doctor.
Tamsen, what do we do? I'm so glad that we've talked about just at least to get a basic understanding of what's going on, the types of symptoms to look out for. But I can imagine a lot of women that are listening to this right now who are already there saying, Jay, I'm 2 years into that.
Yeah.
I've tried everything. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or you've got women who are coming up to it. Some of our audience are younger going, oh gosh, I've seen my mom go through that, or I've seen my aunt go through that, or whatever it may be. How can I help them? What can I do? So where do women start? What do they need to be doing after they've figured out their symptoms? They've talked to a doctor about it. What's the plan? What's the strategy?
First of all, I don't want women to be afraid. I don't want younger women to come into this thinking, oh my gosh, for a third of my life, I'm going to deal with that. There are some incredible things that happened during this time. I think menopause gave me purpose. I can't even believe I say that, but that is really the truth. I had no idea what was going on in my life, and I had no idea what was going to happen after. But I found something really different in myself. So I want women to not feel afraid. When it comes to what to do, as we know, everybody goes through it differently. But I think the most important thing is to be able to have that conversation with a doctor or somebody who specializes in menopause and can give you some of the options. And there are some different options. Some women opt for lifestyle changes, solely lifestyle changes. That's what they want to do. Other women say, you know what, I need something more. I'm dealing with brain fog, the hot flashes, I'm having 15 of them a day. I can't deal with this anymore. Hormone therapy is a very viable option for a lot of women. There was a study that was done in 2002 that scared a lot of women. The Women's Health Initiative headlines came out that said estrogen causes breast cancer. That's essentially what the headlines were. That's what the media took away from it. And it scared women to death. About 44% of women in this country were on hormone therapy at the time. Literally after those headlines came out, it dropped to about 4%. And we're right around 5% right now. That was 20 plus years ago. So that's why it's so important to get this message out. So hormone therapy is one of those options if you are eligible for hormone therapy. There are certain women, certain risk groups that are not. That's one option. It was very helpful for me. It was also something I wasn't sure about. I went back and forth and struggled for a long time whether or not that was going to be something I did. And at one point, my symptoms got so bad that was what I opted to do.
Before we go to the others, what is hormone therapy and what does it include?
Hormone therapy is estrogen and progesterone. And both of those things have been extremely helpful for me with regard to mood, with regard to sleep, with regard to hot flashes. And, we lose so much estrogen. Our estrogen doesn't go like this. It just kind of goes all over the place and then goes down. And so that has been very helpful, estrogen and progesterone. There's also testosterone if a woman decides to do that, if she's dealing with a low libido. And for me, that was something that came about a year later. I wanted to start on the two. I was a little nervous, honestly, because I didn't know what was going on and I'd never done anything like that before. And then there's also vaginal estrogen, which is a fourth component, which is helpful for painful sex or for low libido. So those are hormone therapy, menopausal hormone therapy, you can see it referred to as, or hormone replacement therapy.
Are there any side effects to hormone therapy?
It's been great for me. There's different women that have different things that, some women feel like they've been more emotional on it. There's some women that feel like the patch, if they're on a patch that has the glue, can be irritating to them. Look, there's always risk that comes with everything. But according to the Menopause Society, this is the most effective way to treat these symptoms. And for some women, these symptoms are debilitating, life-changing, and not things that we can say, oh, get through these years and then you'll be okay. And I think that's what's happened for a long time. Women in perimenopause don't think that hormone therapy is an option for them, and it can very well be an option.
And then what were the other solutions? There was lifestyle choices.
Yeah. So lifestyle is so important, I think, to talk about, because as we see, only 4% of women really are on hormone therapy. So we look at the rest and we're saying, what are they doing? Are they struggling every day? So I look at a couple of things. I look at sleep as the number one priority, no matter what. I don't think you can do any of the other things if you don't get sleep, if you don't figure out how to prioritize that. And that became something really important to me. I had to figure out a bedtime. I hadn't done that since I was young, but I really had to figure that out. I had to figure out a wake up time. I had to figure out what not to do before going to bed. I started taking magnesium as a supplement because that was helpful to me before I was doing hormone therapy. Progesterone eventually really helped me get a good night's sleep. So sleep was my number one priority, and that took precedent over everything. And then after that, I looked at some of the other things. The second thing I really paid attention to was the protein I was putting in my body. I grew up as one of the ones that was like, I'll stay on the treadmill all day long, do my cardio, and I guess I'll lift some weights, but I don't really want to do that. Strength training now has risen to the top of my list. It's really, really important to protect your bone health. Like, I had no idea. And I don't think a lot of women did know that for a very long time. So that's important to figure out some type of routine. There's a lot of women that say like, all right, I've been working out for a long time, but I think if you flip it a little bit and put strength training up there first to protect your bones, that's really critical. And then I think the third thing, if we look at some of the lifestyle changes that you would take, obviously we look at food and we look at inflammation and we look at trying to get control of that, because that is very, very real. And I didn't know how important that was. In my 20s and 30s, I'm like, I'll eat what I want. I'll do what I want. I'll play how I want to play, and I'll worry about being older when I'm older. And so I get excited for women who are in their 30s right now that can say, all right, I'm going to look at inflammatory foods. I'm going to try to increase my fiber. I'm going to try to pay attention to what is causing bloating, because bloating is a big problem during this time. And I think also making sure that you're balanced too. Like, I don't get everything right all the time. I try to establish as many healthy habits as I can, but I know it's not always going to be perfect. So you got to give yourself a little grace. And then I think the final thing would be stress management, which I know is easier said than done, but I think it's really, really important. And I think part of that comes with having somebody to talk to. I think it's having community, having loved ones understand. I feel very sad when I look at the decades of women who felt they didn't have anybody to share this with. They didn't share it with partners. They didn't share it with families. Maybe they whispered about it with other women. And we went to DC at the end of last year, and we sat there with one of the lawmakers who said, this is the first time that we've uttered the word menopause out loud in this building. That's unbelievable to me.
So so that's hormonal therapy, lifestyle choices?
Lifestyle changes, yes.
And those
and then I would say lifestyle choices, and I would say stress management and community. I think community is really important. I don't know that I really ever understood community. I understood friends for a very long time, understood friendship groups. I didn't understand the importance of having people that were going through something I was going through. And when I realized that, it changed everything for me. I have a core group of women right now where I can pick up the phone and say, hey, like, I am not myself, or wow, I feel terrible, or, this weight is just making me feel different, or I can't sleep anymore. And so I think that that's a really important part of this process. And I'm excited to see how groups are coming together. One of my friends told me she started the Hottie Hotline with all these women that are going through perimenopause right now from college, and they're sharing their symptoms and going back and forth and having a conversation about it. And I think that's important.
That's such a great distinction between friends and community. I love that. I don't think anyone's ever put it that way before. It's your friends may or may not be going through the same things as you, but your community is that chosen group of people that are going through the same thing. And therefore you can share notes, share your heart. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges that I can say as a man is I just feel like part of that community or your friend needs to be your partner.
Yes.
And it's really hard as a man, when you're completely unaware about this subject, I want to be educated because the woman I love most in the world, my wife, is going to go through this. The other woman that I love most in the world, my mom, has already been through this, and I was maybe too young to be helpful or supportive, but I wish I was more understanding. And then I have a younger sister who's going to go through this. So when I look at it through the lens of my life, I'm thinking, wow, there are 3 women in my life that I love so much, and they're all going to experience this. One of them's already gone through it, and I probably have no clue what she struggled with at the time. And, in one sense, it's quite hard to reflect on that. What do men need to know about menopause?
I love, first of all, that you understand all those touch points in your life. And it's pretty amazing when you think about it. So I think it's so important for men to understand what menopause is.